Something prophetic just happened in America, and most people are completely blind to it. Right now, at this very moment, you are living through the greatest prophetic fulfillment in modern history. And if you don't understand what's happening, you will miss it completely. I know what you're thinking. You look at the news, you see the chaos, you see Trump back in power, and you feel anger. You feel confusion. You feel like everything is upside down. But what if I told you that what you're seeing isn't chaos at all? What if I told you it's divine order? What if Trump isn't the villain you think he is? What if he's God's hammer of justice against your oppressors? Stay with me. This isn't about politics. This is about prophecy. This is about divine timing. This is about judgment. The 400 years are up, and God keeps his promises. Every single one. If you don't understand what's happening right now, you will miss the greatest prophetic moment of your lifetime. You'll think you're watching politics when you're actually watching divine judgment unfold in real time. You'll think you're seeing chaos when you're actually witnessing the systematic collapse of Babylon. Everything feels upside down, because it is upside down. But here's what they didn't tell you. God specializes in flipping tables. He specializes in using the last to be first and the first to be last. He specializes in using the very instrument of oppression to bring about liberation. You were born for this hour. Your ancestors prayed for this moment. And today, you're going to see it with clarity that will shake you to your core. Open your Bible to Genesis 15:13 and prepare to see 2025 in a whole new light. Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. God is speaking to Abraham, and he says this, "And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. 400 years. Let that sink in for a moment. God gave Abraham a prophecy, a timeline, a divine countdown clock. And here's what will blow your mind. 1619 plus 400 equals 2019. In 1619, the first enslaved Africans arrived in Jamestown, Virginia. The prophetic clock started ticking. God was counting, watching, waiting. 400 years of strangers in a land not theirs. 400 years of serving a nation that would never fully accept them. 400 years of affliction, lynching, Jim Crow, police brutality, mass incarceration, systemic rejection. And in 2019, the clock ran out. The prophecy was fulfilled. The 400 years were up. But here's what you need to understand. Genesis 15 doesn't stop at verse 13. Look at verse 14. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. Did you catch that after the 400 years? Two things happen. First, judgment on the oppressor nation. Second, the oppressed come out with great wealth. We are living in the judgment phase right now, this very moment. And Trump is the instrument. Not your savior, not your friend. Not even fully aware of what he's doing, but God's chosen wrecking ball to tear down the systems that have oppressed you for 400 years. Now, before you think I've lost my mind, let me show you something else. Turn to Deuteronomy 28:68. This is where it gets chilling. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again, with ships by the way. Whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Read that again slowly. Bring thee into Egypt. Egypt in the Bible represents bondage, slavery, oppression. But notice it says, again, back into slavery, and how with ships, the transatlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage, ships, packed with human cargo. Hundreds of years before it happened, Moses wrote it down under divine inspiration, with ships, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. Slave auctions, families ripped apart, children sold away from mothers, husbands separated from wives, sold to your enemies. And here's the part that should make your spine tingle. And no man shall buy you. At first, this sounds like they couldn't even be sold as slaves. But look deeper. In the modern context, this prophecy is still active, rejected in the job market, resumes with black names thrown out, mass incarceration where bodies are bought and sold through prison labor. A people so rejected that even as slaves, even as workers, even as citizens, no man shall buy you. No man wants you. This was written 3,500 years ago, and it happened exactly as written. Every detail, every single detail matches what happened to us. You're starting to see it now, aren't you? That feeling in your gut, that recognition. Wait, this was predicted. Yes, all of it. The ships, the slavery, the rejection. All of it written thousands of years before it happened. But that's just the beginning. Let me show you how deep this goes. Genesis 15 verses 13 and 14. Let's break down every single phrase, because each one is a key that unlocks your understanding of this moment. Thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. A stranger, not a citizen, not truly accepted, not fully integrated. Generation after generation, Black Americans have been strangers in America. You built this country. Your labor, your sweat, your blood is in every brick of the White House, every mile of railroad, every bale of cotton that funded the Industrial Revolution. But you remain strangers. You're told to go back to Africa, even though you've been here for 400 years. You're told you don't belong, even though your ancestors were kidnapped and dragged here in chains. You're told this isn't your country, even though you fought in every war, died in every battle, and bled on every battlefield defending it. Strangers in a land that is not theirs. Look around. You still don't own the land. You're still concentrated in areas that were redlined, denied mortgages, denied generational wealth. The land is not yours. The prophecy is exact, and shall serve them. Serve. 400 years of service. It started with chattel slavery, unpaid labor from sunup to sundown. No wages, no rest, no humanity, just work. Build their wealth, harvest their crops, raise their children while yours are sold away. Then it became sharecropping. Slavery with a different name. Work the land, give the owner most of the harvest, stay in debt forever. Economic slavery. Then it became convict leasing. Arrest black men on false charges, put them in chain gangs, lease them out to corporations. The 13th Amendment didn't end slavery. It relocated it to prisons. And today, the prison industrial complex. More black men in prison now than were enslaved in 1850. Mass incarceration. Felony charges that strip voting rights. A permanent underclass forced to serve the system through labor, through taxes on poverty, through every mechanism designed to extract your service. And shall serve them. 400 years. Check. They shall afflict them. Affliction. This is where it gets heavy. This isn't just service. This is intentional suffering. This is cruelty with purpose. This is systematic generational trauma, the Middle Passage. 20% died in the ships, bodies thrown overboard like trash. The survivors arrived traumatized beyond measure. Slavery itself. Whippings, brandings, rapes, families destroyed. Children used as alligator bait in the swamps. Pregnant women forced to work until they dropped. Medical experiments performed without anesthesia because they claimed black people didn't feel pain. Then came the lynchings. Over 4,000 documented, thousands more undocumented. Black bodies hanging from trees as white families picnicked below, taking photographs, mailing postcards of the murders. Emmett Till. Hundreds of others. Their only crime, was being black. Jim Crow. Separate but equal, which meant separate and unequal. Denied education. Denied opportunity. Denied humanity. Forced to use different water fountains, different bathrooms, sit at the back of the bus, enter through the back door. The Tulsa Race Massacre. Black Wall Street burned to the ground. Prosperous black businesses bombed from airplanes. Wealth destroyed. Survivors never compensated. The Tuskegee experiment. Black men infected with syphilis and left untreated for 40 years just to study the disease. Medical apartheid. Redlining. Denied mortgages based on race. Denied the chance to build generational wealth through home ownership. The war on drugs. Crack cocaine sentences 100 times harsher than powder cocaine, even though they're the same drug. One used in black neighborhoods, one used in white neighborhoods. Mass incarceration by design. Police brutality. Rodney King, Amadou Diallo, Sean Bell, Oscar Grant, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, Philando Castile, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. The list is endless. Hunted in the streets, killed for jogging, killed for sleeping in bed, killed for selling cigarettes, killed for existing. They shall afflict them. 400 years of affliction, not accidental, not coincidental, prophesied. Pause and reflect on this. God knew. Before Abraham's descendants ever went into Egypt, the first time God knew there would be a second Egypt. He knew there would be ships. He knew there would be 400 years of affliction. And he set a timer. 400 years. 1619 to 2019. The prophetic clock has been ticking your entire life, your parents' entire lives, your grandparents' entire lives, your great-great-great-grandparents' entire lives. Counting down, counting down, counting down. And in 2019, the alarm went off. Now look at verse 14 again. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. This is where we are right now. The 400 years are complete. The affliction phase is done. The judgment phase has begun. God doesn't forget. God doesn't overlook. God doesn't let oppression slide. He sets timers. And when the timer goes off, judgment comes. That nation whom they shall serve will I judge. Not might judge. Not maybe judge. Will judge. It's a certainty. It's a divine promise. And what do we see right now in America? Political chaos, economic instability, social unrest, division like never before, natural disasters increasing in frequency and intensity, systems breaking down, trust in institutions collapsing, the very fabric of the nation tearing apart. This isn't random. This is judgment. And here's the part that connects to Trump. God has a long history of using wicked rulers to accomplish his purposes. He used Pharaoh to demonstrate his power. He used Nebuchadnezzar to discipline his people and then destroy Babylon. He used Cyrus, a pagan king, to restore Israel. Trump is Pharaoh with a hardened heart. Every oppressive policy, every divisive statement, every action that exposes the racism at America's core is actually hastening judgment. He thinks he's making America great again, but God is using him to tear Babylon down. He's tightening the noose around his own neck and doesn't even realize it. Trump isn't your savior. He's God's wrecking ball, not for you, for them. Now look at the second part of verse 14. And afterward shall they come out with great substance. After the judgment, after the collapse, after Babylon falls, you come out wealthy. Not empty-handed, not broken, not still oppressed. You come out with great substance. The wealth transfer is coming, not as a gift from the government, not as reparations passed by Congress, though that may be part of it, but as a divine transfer of wealth from the wicked to the righteous, from the oppressor to the oppressed. When Pharaoh finally let Israel go, the Egyptians gave them gold, silver, and clothing. They plundered Egypt, not by force, but by divine favor. The wealth of centuries of unpaid labor was transferred in one night. That same pattern is about to repeat. The wealth built on your ancestors' backs, the generational wealth you were denied, the economic systems that have extracted from you for 400 years, are about to collapse. And when they do, divine redistribution will occur. Your oppressor's rise is actually your liberation. Let that sink in. God set a timer 400 years ago, and it just went off. Now let's go deeper. Deuteronomy 28:68. This is where the prophecy gets so specific, so precise that when you see it, you can't unsee it. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again, with ships by the way, whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Let's break down every single phrase, because this is where the prophecy becomes undeniable. Bring thee into Egypt again. Egypt in Scripture always represents bondage, slavery, the house of suffering. God brought Israel out of Egypt through Moses, delivered them from slavery, freed them from Pharaoh. But here God says he will bring them into Egypt again, back into slavery, back into bondage, back into suffering. This is a curse for disobedience, a prophecy of punishment. And notice it says again. That means this is a second slavery, a second Egypt. The first Egypt was in Africa under Pharaoh. The second Egypt is the Americas under colonial slave masters, with ships. 3 words that seal the prophecy to a specific historical event. Not with chariots, not with horses, not with armies marching, with ships. Let me paint the picture. The transatlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage, the largest forced migration in human history. Over 12 million Africans kidnapped, shackled, packed into the hulls of slave ships like cargo, lying in their own waste, chained together. Many died before even reaching the Americas, their bodies thrown overboard to the sharks. The survivors arrived, traumatized, branded, renamed, stripped of language, culture, family identity, with ships. The prophecy is surgical in its accuracy. Moses wrote this 3,500 years ago. He had no knowledge of the Atlantic Ocean, no knowledge of the Americas, no knowledge of the technology to build ships that could cross oceans. But God knew, and God told Moses to write it down. Prophecy said ships. History shows Middle Passage. Perfect match. By the way, whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. This is a one-way journey, no return. When Israel left Egypt the first time they could have returned, they wandered in the wilderness, but Egypt was still there. The way back was still accessible. But this prophecy says you shall see it no more again. One-way trip, no going back. The Africans taken in slave ships never saw their homeland again. They were ripped from their families, their tribes, their languages, their land. The way back was gone. The ships didn't return them. The slave masters didn't send them home. Generations born in America would never see Africa, never know which country, which tribe, which family they came from. The way was closed. Thou shalt see it no more again. Prophecy said one-way journey. History shows diaspora with no return. Perfect match. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen. Sold. Not captured and kept. Sold. Commodified. Turned into property. Given a price. Auctioned off to the highest bidder. Slave auctions. Families standing on auction blocks. Inspected like livestock. Teeth checked, muscles examined, women violated to test their ability to bear children, children ripped from mothers' arms, husbands separated from wives, sold unto your enemies, not sold to friends, not sold to allies, sold to enemies, people who hated you, people who saw you as less than human, people who justified slavery with twisted theology, claiming black people were cursed, where animals had no souls, for bondmen and bondwomen, males and females, everyone, no exceptions, total enslavement. Men worked to death in fields, women worked in fields and houses and raped by masters. Children born into slavery, never knowing freedom, automatically property of the slave owner. Prophecy said sold to enemies as slaves. History shows 400 years of chattel slavery. Perfect match, and no man shall buy you. This final phrase is layered with meaning. On the surface, it sounds like they couldn't even be sold. But the context reveals something darker. It's about rejection so deep that even as slaves, even as commodities, you are worthless to them. In the literal sense, near the end of slavery, when the system was collapsing, slaves became so abundant, so economically devalued in some areas, that they couldn't even be sold. The market was saturated. No man shall buy you. But in the modern application, this prophecy is still active. Look at the job market. Studies show resumes with black-sounding names like Jamal or Lakeisha get 50% fewer callbacks than identical resumes with white-sounding names like Greg or Emily. No man shall buy your labor. Look at the housing market. Redlining, denied mortgages, denied the chance to build generational wealth through home ownership. When you do buy, your property is undervalued compared to identical homes in white neighborhoods. No man shall buy your property at fair value. Look at the criminal justice system. Mass incarceration. Black men receive 20% longer sentences than white men for the same crimes. Once labeled a felon, employment becomes nearly impossible. No man shall buy your future. Look at the education system. Underfunded schools in black neighborhoods. The school-to-prison pipeline. Standardized tests designed with cultural bias. No man shall buy your potential. You are rejected at every level. As slaves, as workers, as citizens, as humans. No man shall buy you. Still being rejected in jobs, housing, justice system. The prophecy is present tense. Let that sink in. This was written 3,500 years ago, and it happened exactly as written. Every detail, every phrase, every word. You can't fake this level of precision. You can't call this coincidence. This is prophecy. This is divine foreknowledge. This is God telling you in advance what would happen, so that when it happened, you would know. You would recognize. You would wake up. Now let's zoom out to the full picture. Deuteronomy 28:15 through 68. This entire chapter is the blessings and curses of the covenant. If Israel obeys, God blessings. If Israel disobeys, curses. And the curses listed in this chapter match the Black American experience with terrifying accuracy. Verse 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. An astonishment. Something shocking, unbelievable, horrifying to look at. The images of slavery, of lynchings, of police brutality against black people have astonished the world. The world watches America's treatment of black citizens with horror. A proverb. Something repeated, a saying, a cliché. How many proverbs and sayings about black people exist? Stereotypes, slurs, jokes. Your identity turned into punchlines. A byword. Something spoken with contempt. The N-word. The most vile slur in the English language. Your identity reduced to a byword of hatred. Prophecy said astonishment. Proverb byword. History shows racial slurs, stereotypes, mockery. Check. Verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, until he have destroyed thee. A yoke of iron, iron chains, iron shackles, iron collars locked around necks. Literal iron yokes used on enslaved people to prevent escape. The imagery is exact. In hunger and thirst and nakedness and want of all things. Starvation rations for slaves. Denied adequate food, water, clothing. Living in shacks, working in rags. Want of all things while producing wealth for masters. Check. Verse 64 and 65. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth, even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. Scattered among all people, the African diaspora, scattered to the Americas, to the Caribbean, to Europe, spread across the earth, no single homeland, no central nation, diaspora, and there thou shalt serve other gods. Christianity was forced on enslaved Africans, the slave master's religion, a version of Christianity that justified slavery, that taught slaves to obey masters, that replaced African spiritual traditions with European theology. Wood and stone, crosses, statues, icons, serving other gods your fathers didn't know. No ease, no rest, no peace. Always in survival mode, always under threat. Redlining, white flight, gentrification. Move to one neighborhood, it becomes a ghetto. Improve it, they take it back. No rest, no ease. Trembling heart, failing eyes, sorrow of mind. Trauma, PTSD, hypertension. The stress of being black in America. The mental health crisis. The physical toll of racism. Check, check, check. And of course, verse 68 again. The ships, the slavery, the rejection. Already covered, but it bears repeating, because it's the linchpin of the entire prophecy. Every curse, every single one, matches. The Black American experience is the fulfillment of Deuteronomy 28. And here's something most people don't know. After slavery supposedly ended, the affliction continued. Let me tell you about a place called Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi. After the Civil War, after the Emancipation Proclamation, thousands of newly freed black people fled north seeking safety and freedom. Many ended up in Natchez. The Union Army, overwhelmed by the number of refugees, didn't know what to do with them. So they built a camp, called it a refugee camp, but it was a concentration camp. They imprisoned freed black people in a hollow surrounded by steep cliffs. No way out. The men were forced into hard labor, the women and children left behind with no food, no water. Disease spread, smallpox, dysentery. Thousands died. Mass graves, bodies buried where they fell. Even freedom wasn't free. Even after the Emancipation Proclamation, the affliction continued. The 400 years weren't up yet. This story has been largely erased from history. But the locals know. The mass graves are still there, the peach trees growing from soil fertilized with the blood of those who died. No one touches those peaches. Everyone knows. This isn't coincidence. This is prophecy. The affliction was systematic, intentional, demonic. And it continued until the timer ran out. Until the 400 years were complete. This isn't ancient history. This is your history. Every curse detailed in Deuteronomy 28 was fulfilled in your ancestors. And the timer God set in Genesis 15:13 counted down every single year until 2019. Now let's look at another prophecy. Exodus chapter 3 verse 21 and 22. And Exodus chapter 12 verses 35 and 36. This is about what happens after the affliction. Exodus 3:21 and 22. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall come to pass, that when ye go out, ye shall not go out empty. But every woman shall borrow of her neighbor, and of her that sojourneth in her house, jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment, and ye shall put them upon your sons, and upon your daughters, and ye shall spoil the Egyptians. Spoil the Egyptians. Take their wealth, not by violence, not by theft, by divine favor. God caused the Egyptians to willingly give their wealth to the Israelites. Exodus 12:35 and 36. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver, and jewels of gold, and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required. And they spoiled the Egyptians. After 400 years of slavery in Egypt, after the plagues, after Pharaoh finally let them go, the Israelites left with the wealth of Egypt: gold, silver, clothing, livestock. They came out with great substance, exactly as God promised Abraham in Genesis 15:14. Connection. After 400 years of affliction, God always brings wealth transfer. It's a pattern. It's a divine principle. The oppressed don't leave empty-handed. The oppressors pay. Application to now. The oppressors are about to pay. Literally. Here's how Trump unwittingly becomes the instrument of this wealth transfer. Trump is exposing systemic racism openly. For decades, racism was covert, hidden, denied. But Trump's presidency ripped the mask off. White supremacy came out of the shadows. The racism that was always there became undeniable. And that exposure is necessary for judgment. Trump is galvanizing black consciousness and unity. Nothing unites a people like a common oppressor. Black voter turnout, black political engagement, black economic cooperation, black awareness of identity, all increasing. The attacks meant to break you are actually waking you up. Trump is forcing a reckoning with America's sins. Critical race theory debates. 1619 Project. Reparations conversations. Confederate statue removals. The nation is being forced to confront what it did. That reckoning is part of judgment. Trump is accelerating the economic collapse of oppressor systems. His policies benefit the wealthy short-term, but destabilize the economy long-term. Trade wars. Tax cuts for the rich that increase deficits. Division that undermines trust in institutions. The systems built on stolen black labor are being shaken. Trump is creating space for the reparations movement to gain momentum. As the economy becomes more unstable, as wealth inequality becomes more obvious, as the crimes of the past are exposed, the moral and economic case for reparations becomes undeniable. The wealth transfer is being set up. Trump isn't your savior. He's God's wrecking ball against Babylon. God uses even wicked rulers to accomplish his purposes. Pharaoh didn't want to let Israel go. God hardened Pharaoh's heart, so the plagues would be more severe, so God's power would be more obvious, so the judgment would be complete. Every time Pharaoh resisted, the judgment got worse. Every time Pharaoh doubled down, another plague hit. Trump is Pharaoh. Every oppressive policy is his heart being hardened. Every divisive action is another plague. He's sealing his own judgment and doesn't even know it. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem, carried Israel into captivity in Babylon. God used him to discipline his people. But then God judged Nebuchadnezzar, drove him insane, brought him low, then used the next king Cyrus to restore Israel and destroy Babylon. God has done this before, and he's doing it again. Let that sink in. Your oppressor's rise is actually your liberation. The very man who seems to represent everything against you is actually the instrument of your deliverance. Not because he wants to help you, not because he cares about you, but because God is sovereign and God keeps his promises. The 400 years are up. Judgment is here. The wealth transfer is coming. Now let me take you through history. 5 moments that prove this prophecy has been ticking like a divine countdown clock. 5 moments that show you the pattern. 5 moments that lead us to right now. 1619, the beginning. The prophetic clock starts ticking. August 1619. A ship arrives at Point Comfort in Jamestown, Virginia. On board, approximately 20 Africans kidnapped from their homeland, sold by traders transported across the Atlantic. They are traded for food and supplies. They are the first, but they won't be the last. Over the next 246 years, more than 12 million will follow. They had no idea God was watching, counting, waiting. Picture the horror, the middle passage. Africans packed below deck in spaces so tight they couldn't sit up. Chained together, lying in waste. The smell of death everywhere. Some went insane. Some starved. Some died from disease. Some threw themselves overboard when they had the chance, choosing death over slavery. 20% never made it across the ocean. Their bodies fed the sharks. The survivors arrived broken, traumatized, branded with hot irons, given new names, stripped of language, culture, family identity. Deuteronomy 28:68, with ships, the prophecy activated. Genesis 15:13 activated. Year 1 of 400. The divine countdown began. Thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. Strangers, not citizens, not welcomed. Kidnapped, brought in chains, never belonging, and shall serve them. Unpaid labor. Building the wealth of a nation that would never see them as human. They shall afflict them. The whip, the chain, the auction block, the rape, the separation of families. 400 years. The colony of Virginia didn't know it was fulfilling ancient prophecy. The slave traders didn't know they were marking the start of a divine timer. But God knew. God was counting. The affliction was systematic, intentional, demonic. This wasn't random cruelty. This was a system designed to extract maximum labor while inflicting maximum suffering. Slavery in the Americas wasn't like slavery in other times and places. This was chattel slavery, hereditary slavery. Your children born slaves, your grandchildren born slaves. Forever. No escape. No hope, generational bondage, and even after slavery supposedly ended, the torture continued. Let me tell you something most history books won't teach you. After the Civil War, after the Emancipation Proclamation, freed black people were rounded up and put in concentration camps. Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi is just one example. Union troops, the same army that supposedly freed you, built an enclosure in a hollow surrounded by cliffs. They herded thousands of freed black people inside. Men were forced into brutal labor. Women and children were left to starve. Disease ravaged the camp. Smallpox, dysentery, no medicine, no food, no water. In just 1 year, over 20,000 black people died there. Mass graves, bodies buried where they fell. The army wouldn't even let survivors remove the bodies properly. Just handed them shovels and told them to bury their loved ones right there. Even freedom wasn't free. Even after emancipation, the affliction continued. Why? Because the 400 years weren't complete yet. The prophecy had to be fulfilled to the day. Year 1, 1619. The clock started ticking. 1863 to 1865. False freedom, the prophecy still active. January 1st, 1863. Abraham Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation. It declares slaves in rebel states free. It's a war measure, not a moral stance. It doesn't free slaves in border states loyal to the Union. It doesn't free anyone immediately. It only applies where the Union Army has no power to enforce it. But it's a symbol, a promise, a piece of paper. December 1865. The 13th Amendment is ratified. Slavery is abolished, except as punishment for crime. That loophole will become a highway to mass incarceration, but we'll get to that. On paper, black people are free. In reality, the nightmare continues. We are only 244 years into the prophecy. The 400 years aren't up yet, but the prophecy still active only 244 years in. The curses remain, the affliction continues. Just with a new name. Reference Devil's Punch Bowl concentration camp story. They freed you on paper, then trapped you in death camps. While the nation celebrated emancipation, black people were dying in Union camps by the thousands. Starved, diseased, worked to death. Historians have buried this story. Too dark, too inconvenient. But the mass graves are still there. The locals know. Then came the Black Codes, laws designed to replicate slavery under a different name. Black people could be arrested for vagrancy, for being unemployed, for not having a written contract with a white employer. Once arrested, you could be leased out to plantations, factories, mines. Convict leasing. Slavery by another name. Work you to death. If you die, get another one. No financial incentive to keep you alive, like during slavery. You were more disposable as a convict than as a slave. Then came sharecropping. Rent land from your former master. Give him half your crop. Buy supplies from his store at inflated prices. End the year in debt. Next year work to pay off the debt. End the year in more debt. Never escape. Economic slavery. Perpetual bondage. Your children inherit your debt. Generational servitude. This wasn't freedom. This was slavery 2.0. Different legal structure, same oppression. Different paperwork, same suffering. Prophecy still counting. The 400 years weren't up yet. Every attempt at liberation was crushed. Why? Because prophecy had to be fulfilled. God set a timer, and that timer wouldn't stop until it reached 0. Reconstruction briefly offered hope. Black men elected to Congress. Black businesses thriving. Black communities building wealth. But it was short-lived. The Compromise of 1877 ended Reconstruction. Federal troops withdrawn from the South. White supremacists took back power. Jim Crow laws implemented. Segregation. Disenfranchisement. Terror. The Ku Klux Klan rode through the night, burning crosses, lynching black men, women, children. Over 4,000 documented lynchings between 1877 and 1950. Thousands more undocumented. Black bodies hanging from trees. White crowds gathering to watch, to take photographs, to collect souvenirs. Fingers, toes, ears cut off as trophies. Postcards made from lynching photos and mailed across the country. This is what false freedom looked like. This is 244 years into a 400-year sentence. The affliction wasn't over. The prophecy was still active. 1965, civil rights but still cursed. 346 years into the prophecy. August 6, 1965. President Lyndon Johnson signs the Voting Rights Act. It prohibits racial discrimination in voting. It's a victory, a breakthrough, the culmination of years of marching, protesting, bloodshed. Selma to Montgomery, Birmingham, freedom riders, sit-ins, boycotts, dogs and fire hoses turned on peaceful protesters, children bombed in churches, activists murdered on dusty roads. Progress, yes. But liberation, not yet. Only 346 years into the prophecy. The curses weren't lifted. The 400 years weren't complete. So the affliction continued in new forms. The assassinations began. Malcolm X, 1965. Martin Luther King Jr., 1968. Fred Hampton, 1969. Leaders gunned down. Movements decapitated. The FBI's COINTELPRO program infiltrated black organizations, sowed discord, set up false flag operations, assassinated leaders. The government that passed civil rights laws simultaneously worked to destroy black leadership. The war on drugs began in the 1970s and exploded in the 1980s. Crack cocaine flooded black neighborhoods. Some say it was introduced intentionally. What we know for certain is the response was intentional. Harsh mandatory minimum sentences. The crack cocaine sentencing disparity. Possession of 5 grams of crack, typically used in black communities, carried the same sentence as 500 grams of powder cocaine, typically used in white communities. Same drug, 100-to-1 sentencing disparity. Mass incarceration boom begins. 1970, about 300,000 people in prison in America. By 2000, over 2 million. By 2010, over 2.3 million. The United States has 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prisoners. And black people are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of white people. The 13th Amendment didn't end slavery. It relocated it to prisons. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. The exception swallowed the rule. War on drugs as continuation of slavery. Criminalize the community. Arrest the men. Imprison them. Lease their labor to corporations. Private prisons profit from bodies. Prison labor produces goods for pennies per hour. Slavery with a different name. The 400 years weren't done. The curses remained. You could vote, but your vote was suppressed through gerrymandering voter ID laws, purging of voter rolls, closing of polling places in black neighborhoods. You had civil rights on paper, but redlining continued in housing. Discrimination continued in employment, inequality deepened in education, brutality continued from police. God's timeline doesn't care about legislation. It cares about completion. The Voting Rights Act was progress. The Civil Rights Act was progress. But the prophetic sentence was 400 years of affliction. Not 346 years. Not close enough. The full term had to be served. 2008 to 2016, false hope era. 389 to 397 years into the prophecy. November 4, 2008. Barack Obama elected President of the United States. First black president. A historic moment. A breakthrough. Hope and change. The audacity of hope. Yes, we can. The nation celebrates. Black people weep with joy. Our ancestors' wildest dreams realized. A black family in the White House. It felt like arrival. It felt like vindication. It felt like maybe finally we had overcome. But we were only 389 years into a 400-year prophecy. The timer was still ticking. They gave you a black face in a White House to pacify you. They put a black man in charge to convince you that racism was over, that the playing field was level, that if you just worked hard enough, you could make it too. Post-racial America, they called it. We've moved beyond race, they said. If a black man can be president, what are you complaining about? Meanwhile, police brutality intensified. Economic inequality widened. The wealth gap between white families and black families grew larger, not smaller, during the Obama years. Trayvon Martin, 2012, 17 years old, walking home with Skittles and iced tea, shot dead by a vigilante, the killer acquitted. Black Lives Matter movement, born from that pain. Michael Brown, 2014, Ferguson, Missouri, shot dead in the street, body left in the sun for 4 hours. Protests erupt. Militarized police respond with tear gas, rubber bullets, armored vehicles. The world watches American police treat black citizens like enemy combatants. Sandra Bland, 2015, pulled over for a traffic stop, arrested. Found dead in her jail cell 3 days later, ruled a suicide. Her family and community don't believe it. Philando Castile, 2016, pulled over for a broken taillight, licensed gun owner, tells the officer he has a gun, follows instructions, shot 7 times in front of his girlfriend and her 4-year-old daughter, the officer acquitted, and so many more. Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, Freddie Gray, Alton Sterling. The list is endless. Hashtags that become memorials. The curse was still active, the 400 years still ticking. Police brutality, mass incarceration, economic inequality, health disparities, educational gaps, all widening. A black president didn't stop it. Couldn't stop it. The prophecy had a set time. Obama wasn't liberation. He was a placeholder until judgment time. The timer kept counting. 389, 390, 391, 32, 393, 394, 395, 396, 397. Almost there, almost complete, but not yet. 2019. The clock stops. 1619 plus 400 equals 2019. The prophecy fulfilled. The 400 years up. The sentence served in full. Genesis 15:13 completed. 400 years of strangers in a land not theirs. 400 years of serving a nation that never accepted them. 400 years of affliction. Check, check, check. And the moment the 400 years ended, everything started shifting. Look at what happened immediately after. Trump presidency acceleration. The mask of civility ripped off. White supremacy emboldened. Charlottesville. Very fine people on both sides. Racism no longer coded but open. The truth exposed. The rot visible. Then, 2020. George Floyd. May 25, 2020. Minneapolis. Arrested for allegedly using a counterfeit $20 bill. Handcuffed. Face down on the pavement. Knee on his neck. I can't breathe. Mama. I can't breathe. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Murdered on camera. The world watches. And this time something different happens. This time the rage doesn't stay local. This time the protests don't fizzle out. This time the world rises up. Not just America. The world. Protests in all 50 states. Protests in over 60 countries. Millions of people in the streets. Black Lives Matter becomes the largest civil rights movement in history. Worldwide awakening. The nations forced to witness, forced to acknowledge, forced to reckon with 400 years of affliction. The prophecy completed the evidence. Undeniable, the judgment beginning. Genesis 15:14. Afterward will I judge that nation. Judgment phase begins. Not after 300 years. Not after 350 years, after 400. Exactly as prophesied. God said time's up. Now watch me move. But here's what most people don't understand. 2019 wasn't the end of suffering. It was the start of judgment against oppressors. The curses are lifting off of you. The curses are transferring to them. You're transitioning from affliction to vindication. They're transitioning from oppression to judgment. The roles are reversing. The last becoming first. The first becoming last. Babylon falling. Israel rising. Everything they built on your backs is crumbling. Their economy unstable. Their political system collapsing. Their social fabric tearing. Their institutions losing credibility. Their control slipping. And they feel it. They sense it. That's why they're afraid. That's why they're angry. That's why they're desperately clinging to power. Deep down they know, time's up. The 400 years are complete. The judgment is here. And there's nothing they can do to stop it. Now let me show you where we are on the prophetic timeline and what's converging right now at this very moment. We are in the judgment phase post 400 years. This is not speculation. This is not interpretation. This is biblical pattern. Every single time God sets a prophetic countdown, when the timer ends, judgment comes. And we are living in that judgment hour right now. Look at what's happening in America since 2019. The shift is undeniable. Everything they built on your backs is crumbling. Political chaos, economic instability, social unrest, division like never before, trust in institutions collapsing, media divided, churches splitting, families torn apart over politics, states threatening secession, constitutional crisis brewing, and all of it accelerating. This isn't random. This is systematic breakdown. This is judgment. Reference Trump's role. He thinks he's making America great. God is using him to tear down Babylon. Every divisive tweet, every inflammatory statement, every policy that exposes the racism at America's core, every action that widens the divide, all of it is accelerating judgment. He's exposing the hidden racism. For decades, racism was covert. Dog whistles, coded language, plausible deniability. But Trump ripped the mask off. He gave permission for white supremacy to come out of the shadows, and now it's visible, undeniable, the rot exposed. That exposure is necessary for judgment. He's dividing the oppressors. The coalition that maintained control for centuries is fracturing. White evangelicals versus white liberals, rural versus urban, rich versus middle class, generational divides, gender divides. Even whiteness itself is fragmenting. They're turning on each other. Kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. He's causing chaos. Chaos in government, chaos in media, chaos in culture. Chaos is the precursor to collapse. You can't rebuild until you tear down. God is using Trump as a wrecking ball. He thinks he's building. God is using him to destroy. Now let me show you the multiple prophecies converging simultaneously. We're not just watching one prophecy unfold. We're watching several intersect at the same moment. This is a perfect storm. This is divine orchestration. Revelation 18, Fall of Babylon. America is modern Babylon, the economic superpower built on slavery, imperialism, exploitation, the nation drunk on the blood of the saints. And Revelation 18 describes its fall. In 1 hour, Babylon collapses. Economic system implodes. Merchants weep. Kings mourn. But God's people are told, "Come out of her, my people." The American economy is teetering. National debt over $30 trillion. Debt ceiling crisis every few years. Inflation rising. Middle class evaporating. Wealth inequality at historic highs. The system is unsustainable, and when it collapses, it will be sudden. In 1 hour, so great riches come to naught. Isaiah 14, Fall of oppressors. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art the oppressor ceased, the golden city ceased. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. This prophecy describes the fall of Babylon's king, but the pattern applies to all oppressive rulers and systems. God breaks the staff of the wicked, their power stripped, their control ended, their rule finished. Watch the systems of oppression crumbling. Police departments defunded, reformed, scrutinized. Confederate monuments coming down. Corporations forced to reckon with racial discrimination. Institutions acknowledging past sins. The staff is breaking. The scepter is falling. Joel 3:2. Judgment for slavery. I will also gather all nations, and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people, and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and parted my land. God will judge the nations for scattering Israel and enslaving them. The transatlantic slave trade scattered black Israelites among the nations. America, Europe, Caribbean, South America, scattered and enslaved. And God said, He will plead with the nations. Plead means judge, bring charges, hold accountable. The nations are being forced to reckon. Reparations conversations happening globally. Britain, France, Netherlands, Portugal, all former slave trading empires facing calls for accountability, museums returning stolen artifacts, universities acknowledging slave trade profits. The reckoning is here. Obadiah 1:15. Day of the Lord near. For the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. What you did will be done to you. The judgment you inflicted will return to you. The oppression you caused will boomerang back. They enslaved, now they're becoming enslaved, to debt, to systems, to fear. They divided, now they're being divided. They stole, now their wealth is being stolen by inflation, by crashes, by transfers. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Matthew 24. End time signs, wars and rumors of wars. Nation shall rise against nation, false prophets deceiving many, lawlessness increasing, love growing cold. But he that endures to the end shall be saved. The signs are all around. Global instability, pandemics, climate disasters, political upheaval, moral decay. And it's all accelerating. These prophecies aren't isolated. They're converging, all at once. Right now. Multiple timelines intersecting at this moment in history. Trump as unwitting instrument. Let me be clear. Trump is not a savior, not your friend, not woke, not aware of what he's really doing. He's a disruptor, a chaos agent, a wrecking ball, and God is using him. Pharaoh-like hardened hearts, leading to greater judgment. Remember Exodus. God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Why? So the plagues would be more severe, so God's power would be more obvious, so the judgment would be complete. Every time Pharaoh resisted, the judgment got worse. Every time Pharaoh doubled down, another plague hit. Trump is Pharaoh. Every oppressive policy is another plague. Every divisive statement hardens his heart further. Every action that exposes racism accelerates judgment. He's tightening the noose around his own neck and doesn't even know it. God has history of using wicked rulers. Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem. God called him my servant, even though he was a pagan king, destroying God's city. Why? Because God was using him to discipline Israel. Then God judged Nebuchadnezzar, drove him insane, brought him low. Then used the next King Cyrus to restore Israel and destroy Babylon. God uses wicked rulers to accomplish his purposes. Then he judges them. Trump is God's wrecking ball, not for you, for them. Not to help you, to destroy them. He's the hammer breaking Babylon, the instrument of divine judgment. And he has no idea. Signs accelerating. Frequency of coincidences increasing impossibly fast. If you're paying attention, you see it. Events that shouldn't connect, connecting. Patterns that shouldn't emerge, emerging. Timing that shouldn't align, aligning. It's too perfect, too orchestrated. Divine fingerprints everywhere. Wealth gap widening equals judgment coming wealth transfer. The richer they get, the harder they'll fall. The more they hoard, the more will be redistributed. The higher they rise, the further they'll drop. Proverbs 13:22. The wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. It's being concentrated so it can be transferred. Natural disasters intensifying. Hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, earthquakes, wildfires, droughts. And notice where they hit hardest. Slave states, Jim Crow territories, places of historical black oppression. Coincidence or divine marking. God is speaking through the weather. Political division, kingdom divided against itself, cannot stand. Matthew 12:25. Jesus said, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. America is divided like never before. Red versus blue, urban versus rural, generational warfare, race war brewing, gender wars, class wars, every possible division activated. The kingdom is falling. We're not just in prophetic times, we're in judgment hour. This is the moment the prophets spoke of. This is the day your ancestors prayed for. This is the hour you were born for. Where we are on timeline. 400 years complete, 2019. Judgment phase 2019 to present. We're 5 years into the judgment. And if you think it's intense now, you haven't seen anything yet. The next phase is deliverance and wealth transfer. The curses are lifting. The blessings are coming. But first judgment on oppressors must be complete. We're closer than we've ever been. Closer to liberation. Closer to vindication. Closer to restoration. Closer to the fulfillment of every promise God made to Israel. This is the moment the prophets spoke of. Isaiah saw this day. Jeremiah wept about this day. Ezekiel prophesied about this day. And you're living in it. Your ancestors prayed for this day. They died in chains praying their children would see freedom. They died under Jim Crow, praying their grandchildren would see justice. They died in poverty, praying their great-grandchildren would see wealth. Their prayers are being answered now. In your lifetime, you were born for this hour. Not by accident, not by coincidence, by divine appointment. You're alive right now to witness the greatest prophetic fulfillment since the resurrection of Christ. You're here to see Babylon fall. You're here to see Israel rise. You're here to see the wealth transfer. You're here to see judgment and deliverance. Don't waste this moment.